During my time at the Woodspring, I got a text from Tim Cunningham, who is a guy I used to date. He used to work at Midtown Spa with the manager, Alan Stewart, and he lives with him. And I had visited him before, the year before, there. And I was describing this shit. I'd seen him, I visited him while I was at the Grove in Manor, and where Alan has the house there. And they said they had a room for rent for like $400 a month, and I was like, "Shit, I'm on it." So the next day I went over there, and then again, my dad and Tom were like having a conversation behind my back when they were pushing me to find a place, and then I found a place for $400 a month, and they're like, "Well, hold on," and then I'm outside waiting for a lift after I'd already informed them of it like the night before, and like they're like questioning it, and I'm like, got all my stuff there on the curb, and they're sitting there spending like an hour like having a conversation like, is this good for him, blah 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 blah. I'm like, how is hotel hopping like what the fuck, like you keep pushing me to get out of a hotel and to find a place, and I found a cheap place for $400 a month, all bills paid, and you're questioning it. Like, when you didn't question it last night, like you couldn't have this hour conversation behind my back, which I don't appreciate anyway, behind my, like you couldn't do that. Like, I'm sitting there. I even sent a picture of Tom, of my stuff to Tom and my dad, I think. And I was like, they're my bags. Like, I'm on the curb waiting to go. Like, what the fuck? Like, I want to go. I'm sitting here isolated. I don't have any friends here. There are drugs. Like, if I wanted to get drugs, I could get them here if I really wanted to. Like, what do you think? Like, anyway, so disappointing in the reaction to that. Like, they're treating me like some person. Like, first of all, you want me to find a place, I find a place, and I already tell you about it the night before, and then like when I'm ready to go, I'm like, okay, I got my stuff, okay, I'm gonna go. Like, Tom, I have to ask you to order me a lift, anywhere, when I need to go somewhere, and here I am. And like, you all of a sudden like pause and make me feel like some sort of like outcast and retard, and like it's so humiliating, it's so dehumanizing, and it just hurts so much, and it makes you feel so bad when people do that. Don't talk about people behind their back like that. Like, I'm a competent, rational individual, and when you talk to me like a normal person, I demonstrate that. When you frustrate me, like again and again and let me down while I'm being tortured and terrorized, yeah, I'm gonna start putting all caps in text messages. When I would send you text messages over and over and over again, telling you like, I'm still being tortured and terrorized. Can you please hire an investigator and go question those ladies? Can you please send someone with drones and look over the house? No, you never did that. Over and over and over again. And like I said, don't let me know about it, initially, because like if you tell me about it, then they'll go away when you come over. And it's a logistics nightmare. And I told him that while I stayed at the house in Manor, over and over and over again. I got zapped all the time. It's not as bad as it is now, but it would get worse and then it would get better. And then they would like say, well, if you do something, whatever. And Alan and Tim both do meth. I didn't think Alan did, but he does. But it's important to note, like, that all that squiggling stuff, that's not camera noise. I had a Note 7 and then a Note S8, and now I have a Note 8 phone. Those are the best cameras that you can get on mobile phones, even in dimly lit conditions. Now, and I'm telling you, they do not produce camera noise that badly. So you need to stop saying it's camera noise, because I saw it with my eyes. And Tim, when you kept saying like, well, I don't see it. And I'm like, well, you see it right there in the video. And he's like, yeah, but I didn't see it on the wall. I'm like, I know you weren't there. They don't like, and you started to see it, Tim. You started to see things in the corner of your eyes, and it wasn't sleep deprivation. They started to fuck with you then. And I'll put videos of that. Also, when I was at the Manor House, they put projections on the wall, even in the middle of the day. Like, even those still shots and the shots of it's a plain white wall. I mean, it's off-white or whatever. It's like got a bad paint job, but it doesn't have pink and blue and green colors all over it. Nor does the camera produce that when looking at a normal wall. Like, do you see that here on this wall? No, they're not doing it crazy. You see like super crazy colors? No. I mean, there's a little bit like up here, and that could be them. That could be camera noise. I'm not recording on one. I'm recording this on a Chromebook, but it's not like the photo that I'll put right here. It's not like that. It's not crazy like that. And it would move all over the place. So, and it would look like illustrations. So and illustrations don't always come out. And again, sometimes when I record that, they're putting more projections on the screen or in my eyes while I'm doing that. So they enhance it sometimes, I assume. Sometimes I don't know, because and that's why I started taking videos of videos so much.
So this is my bedroom. We're looking up at the wall above the closet and the ceiling. I want to freeze it here and suggest some places that could be interpreted as eyes. Regardless if you can make out any content yourself, please note that these anomalies, this movement, these colors, not the saturated, but all this movement I saw with my eyes unaided without the camera.
We're going to look at the left, and you can see some places where there look like there could be an interpretation of some eyes. I'm going to focus here on one area of the wall in which I interpreted sort of like a creature, and maybe you interpret it differently or not, or as nothing at all. There's the eyes, and there's the beak. It's a common shape that I see in this quite often, and I'll show it in the rest of the image now, and remove the enhancements. And you'll see that the shapes are still there, along with a whole bunch of other shapes. And again, whether or not you interpret this as anything, I still saw these shapes on the wall in these colors, not as saturated, and I saw them moving like this without the use of a camera. So in the alcove and on the right wall, you'll see you could interpret it a lot of different ways. And even if you can't make any content out of this, again, I'm not claiming there is any specific content, you can still make out various shapes that are not on the wall normally and are not the normal shape of camera noise. And again, I saw this with my eyes unaided on the wall. It wasn't as colorful, but I saw it on the wall, changing, shifting, and squiggling. And it appears to be animations to me sometimes. And again, I think it's intended to be interpreted that way and to draw your attention. And in some cases, it's used to scare people and to frighten people, because they can create holograms of human shapes and of creatures that look like there's like a person in your closet or a creature that's in the corner or something like that. So this is a view of the wall above my closet, and whether or not you can make out any animated content or whatever, again, what's important to note is that I saw this with my own eyes, unaided, without the camera. I didn't just choose to point the camera there and then, in a paranoid state, like look through the camera noise. This is not camera noise. I saw it with my eyes. And here's a freeze frame, and I'm going to put some eyes on here, what could be interpreted as eyes. And I think in many of the cases, it's pretty obvious that it's intended to look like eyes. So this is when you step out the front of the house, and then if you look to the right, there's a big bush there. And the Gangstalkers terrorists like to project faces into the trees, and they can also create faces physically with their weapons that can literally jab you or push you, to the side, or push you forward, or push against you. I've literally seen them create in slow motion eye sockets, and then not just pupils, but then irises as well. Anytime I saw this roof line here that looks kind of like a check, they would make a comment about Verizon, because it looks like the Verizon check, kind of. This is actually a stop sign right there, and I kept seeing it rapidly flash and change different shapes. I also saw that house there on the hill. I would see it rapidly change colors, similar to what it looks like now. This is slowed down a little bit, but in slow motion you can see how it puts things that could be interpreted as faces. Those eyes, when this twack, when it intersects anything that's brighter than it, or that can show the pattern against it, it makes it look like there's faces on it. So, and it captures the attention, it kind of confuses you, and it allows you to waste your time because you're just sitting there staring at it in awe or confusion. You'll see here that the stop sign continuously looks like it has a pair of eyes or a single eye on it, or what could be interpreted that way. Even my channel icon, looks like there's a face in the stop sign. I think they have this capability because I think that this was meant for hostage and crisis scenarios, so that they could, protect the victims, so that the perpetrators can't get to them, and also make it look like, there's an army of people coming in there to get them, or just to, confuse the hell out of them and make it difficult for them to, be successful in hurting more people or in keeping people hostage. So this is a view if you walk outside the front door and you turn to the right and look across the driveway. There's a big bush there, and I'm going to freeze it here, and I'm going to show how you could interpret it with having eyes in it, and how they can confuse people and catch someone's attention and waste their time and scare them or freak them out or just confuse them. Similar to the projections on the walls or in the bedrooms, you might not see these shapes yourself or interpret them that way, but I hope that this points out how they could be interpreted that way and are meant to be interpreted that way, I believe, to take advantage of the brain's pattern recognition and facial recognition and eye recognition. Not only can they project images into the foliage, just like they can into bedrooms and onto walls, they can, because these devices can jab you, or at a larger scale push you, they can literally push the foliage around, and so they can create hollow spaces to where that they can make eyes. So if there's a hole already in the tree somewhere or a hollowed out point, I've literally seen like another one appear to the left or to the right of it to give the appearance of another eye, and for them to I've literally seen it in slow motion to where they were literally creating an eye. Even in them projecting into it, and even creating like an iris, not just a hole for an eye, but like literally creating an iris in the pupil. So this is a shot above the roof of the neighbor next door. There's the roof. It's really hard to see. As you can see, it's obscured by the twack, not just low light conditions, and that's not just camera noise, but there it is again. But this is why it's impossible to get footage of the drones, especially at night. Because if you turn your flash on, all this twack that you see reflects back at you. It's like turning your bright lights on in the car when it's really foggy. It just, reflects back at you. That's why they have fog lights that are lower to get below the fog. But it's the same type of concept. So literally, drones could be flying all above you, and you literally wouldn't be able to see them at all. Or what they do is they put images of drones in the air where there aren't drones. So you think you can capture a drone, but it's really not their drone. And so you can really not see where their true drones are. Or they'll put images of like other things flying in the air, birds or other things, or alien spacecraft or something like that. So here I'm in the kitchen, and there's a night light on in there, or the stove light. And it's important to note that I saw all of this with my eyes unaided. It moves very fast though, so sometimes it's hard to see these individual components of it, but I would see all this wiggling and movement, and it would also dim the lighting in the room, or to obscure the light further in the dining room and in the living room area. It would look much darker than it was. So the Gangstalkers group likes to put little creatures of things on there with eyes and sometimes mouths and with irregular shapes, and so sometimes the left eye will look different size than the right eye. And so I'm going to zoom in here, or not zoom in here, but I'm going to focus in here on the right to where you can see sort of like what could be eyes, or perceived as eyes. So we're going to look at this part right here. And so there could be an eye here, and like a mouth. And it may not be, but it's not camera noise. I saw it with my eyes. So I'm going to focus on a larger area and show you how they stack eyes on eyes on eyes. So here we're going to focus on this. And so if you focus on where the eyes are, you'll see that they become sort of like different creature shapes, where the mouth of one would be the eyes of the next one, or something like that. So I'm going to put more eyes up here. And so I would pause this and I would take a look at it, and you can see how they could be perceived as eyes. This is a good one here because it pretty much just shows just the eyes. Some of them are still stacked on top of each other, but
So pretty clear that, you can even see the glimmer in the eye, and you can see the iris in some of these cases. Sometimes they have irises like in the middle here. So right here on the left, there's a little statuette on a table of a horse, and all of this wiggling, when I saw it in the dining room, to the eye, it made it look like the horse was running. I obviously didn't think it was running. It was just the appearance of it. It kind of made it look like it was galloping. And then there's also faces. There's all this, twack in between, so now you can't even make out the horse. But here it is again. The camera's moved a little bit, and it kind of looks like its hooves are up in the air, but they're not. They're all four are on the ground, and it's going to look like it's starting to run again because of the wiggling. And all this twack in between the objects or the walls and the eyes. That's why it causes the camera to refocus a lot, and it also can cause the eye to refocus a lot. And it can be used to sort of make things like stereograms, the 3D images that used to be the craze in the 90s. So here we have the kitchen counter again, and all this twack that you see, that it sort of engulfs the appliances and the objects on the counters, the Windex bottles, the spray bottles, the furniture, and things like that. And because they're holograms, they're essentially holograms. Sometimes the eyes are done in a way where you can interpret it as two eyes, or sometimes you could interpret it as a single, like Cyclops eye, where it has an iris, and the edges of the iris, if you reinterpret it, could be the two pupils of a pair of eyes, and they'll merge and they'll split and things like that. Here's more of the kitchen countertop, and I mentioned like spray bottles and Windex bottles, like getting creatures on them, and here you can see you could interpret it as creatures in various ways. And when you focus in on the eyes or one of the eyes, sometimes they'll say shit like, they'll be like, "Ooh, there's a creature there," or they'll go, "Creature, feature," or they'll say things like, when the Cyclops went above, they went, "The Eye of Thundera," or "Eye of Thundera." So they know exactly what you're looking at, because they I don't know if they use the electro laser for that, but they can use it like an invisible pointer, and they can get you to focus in on a single thing. So here's in my bedroom. This is the wall above my closet. All this movement I saw with my eyes without the aid of a camera. I'm going to freeze it here. I'm going to showcase this area right here. I think it's pretty clear that these could be interpreted as eyes. And again, it doesn't matter if you can't interpret them that way. I saw it with my eyes unaided. So if you look at the eyes, you could interpret this loosely as a mouth. Not so much when you look at the mouth directly, but if you focus on the eyes, then it's more likely for you to be able to see that as a mouth in your peripheral vision. I'm going to showcase some other areas where they could be interpreted as eyes and creatures of various shapes here. Again, you can interpret it multiple ways. You can interpret it, an infinite number of ways. And it doesn't matter if this is intended content. I think it is, but even if it isn't, I saw all this twack or all this noise without the aid of a camera with my eyes. I didn't just choose to take the camera and just suddenly point it at the wall. I don't enjoy spending hundreds and hundreds, or if not thousands of hours of my time pointing the camera at the walls and the sky and in trees, and wasting my entire life while I'm suffering constant physical and sexual assault by these people, and while they describe the things that I see. But in the corner here, I think it's pretty clear. You can see some imagery there. Again, I saw this with my eyes without the aid of a camera. That's why I pointed it there. None of this should be on the walls. Even if it was still, it shouldn't be on the walls. This is not normal camera noise. This isn't camera noise at all. I'm going to freeze it here to showcase above the closet. I think that's pretty clearly an eye, or something that couldn't be interpreted that way. It even has an iris, and it'll morph and it'll change. It'll be, you could interpret it as being a part of a pair of eyes, or you could interpret it as just a single eye. But this is what I saw like every single day. And then any time that Tim came into my room, or Alan was nearby, or not nearby, but next to me, this stuff would die down where I really couldn't see it. But when they left the room, or when they were facing in the opposite direction of me, this stuff would kick up a notch. But that's it. This is a twack on a regular day basis. So here we are looking into the living room. The hallway is to the right, and the light is on in it. The living room
wouldn't normally look this dark, but it does to the camera. So I'm going to lighten it up here just a little bit. And so all this noise, this is not camera noise. I mean, there might be some of it because of the low light condition, but this is a Note 8 camera that I have here. So it takes 4K videos, although when I edit them, it goes down to 1K or HD, full HD. But all this noise I saw with my eyes. So whether or not you can make out any content in this, I still saw it. And around the TV and around the table to the left of it, and I think there's a plant in the corner there, and the artwork. This noise appeared to come out, and I don't believe it just appeared to. It came out in three-dimensional space. So they are holograms, or they appear to be like holograms. So all this noise and all this twack, it would fill the room up with all this squiggling and all this movement. It appeared to create like these holographic, mostly transparent creatures around like the table with like eyes on it and mouths on them, or something that was meant for the brain to interpret it that way. And again, regardless if you can make out any content in this projected noise or this projected twack, I saw it with my eyes unaided without the use of a camera. I didn't just simply point the camera into a dimly lit room and just look for the noise and look for patterns in the noise and look for, crazy stuff and get in a paranoid, delusional, schizophrenic state, suffering from 24/7 psychoses, none of which I'm actually experiencing. I saw this with my eyes, and so I pointed the camera in the direction that I saw this crap, and so that I could get footage of it. So you are experiencing what I saw with my eyes. Sometimes the colors are different. Sometimes it doesn't. It never really does it justice. So keep in mind that when I saw this, I was able to make out content that was clearer to the eye than it is to the camera. And again, I think that this was meant to be used for crises and hostage situations so that you could, if you were like in a SWAT team, you could provide some camouflage and cover for victims or hostages, and so that you could also confuse the perpetrators, the gunmen, the terrorists, and make it harder for them to find victims, make it harder for them to shoot the SWAT team. I've seen these things lit up like a neon sign almost, with very clear holographic 3D images, and I've actually literally walked around them. Of course, I didn't have my camera at the time because they showed the best evidence when there's nobody around and when I don't have my camera on them. So again, and I'm not a liar, so this is usually some of the best footage that I can get because they like to play around with it and they like to fuck with people with this stuff that was meant for other purposes. And then you look even crazier when you try to show this footage to other people, and then they're like, that's just camera noise. Like, I don't see what you see. And it's like, well, you see part of what I saw, or you see what I saw with my eyes unaided. So there has to be an explanation for why I saw this noise to begin with. If this was a room that this wasn't happening in with someone that wasn't being gang stalked, it wouldn't look this noisy, and it wouldn't have these patterns in it, these things that look like eyes, or that look like mouths, or that move. Like something that looks like a pair of eyes. That wouldn't happen with normal camera noise over and over and over again. And again, if it was just camera noise, I wouldn't see it with my eyes unaided. So there it looks like could be a pair of eyes. You can even make out the irises in them. I would see all the squiggling all the time and see these or mostly transparent holographic projected twack coming out from the wall. So here's something I think is more clearly the eyes. I mean, or it could be interpreted as eyes. I'll even suggest like where some facial features are. I'll do it here too. There's even some color there. You can even make out the irises in them. Here I'm in the living room doing some footage of a reflection to showcase what I often see in the mirror. This is an art print with glass in front of it. The mirror trick started when I was at the Grove in 2017. Now here it is 2018, and I would always see this twack in my reflection. They would morph my face when I was in front of mirrors. In 2019, one thing that they did that I'm going to emulate here, even though it wasn't during this time period, is that when I was looking in the mirror, they didn't do the typical morph thing that they did with the twack. It literally appeared as if another pair of human eyes, like from a photograph, were put in place for my eyes. It kind of appeared to be like one of those tools that is used to come up with an image of a perpetrator or a suspect based on the description from the victim or eyewitnesses. I'm sure you've seen various tools where they mix and match eyes, mouths, and nose and things like that. That's what it appeared to be, but just on the eye area. And I was literally looking at my eyes in the mirror, and then it looked like another pair of eyes slid down on top of them. And I don't know if it was projected into my eyes, if it was projected onto the mirror. I have no idea, but it was really cool. And this doesn't do it justice, but this is kind of what it looked like. So here I'm going to freeze frame it, and I'm going to show you, different interpretations that could be made out of the twack. Again, I'm not saying that this is necessarily the intended content, but I think it's meant to be interpreted multiple different ways and to trick the brain into pattern recognition. But I thought this one was pretty clear how it could be interpreted that way. And you'll see, like when I remove it, that this is actually where my eyes are up here, and that's where my face is. So it's like completely off of where my eyes should be and where my jaw should be. So here I think one of my eyes definitely looks more cartoony than the other. And if you also look at my mouth, it looks like it's crooked, but I'm not twisting my mouth in any sort of way. I'm not doing a smirk or anything like that. Here I think it's very clear that there's some sort of anomaly happening between my eyes and the reflection, or between the camera lens and the reflection. My eyes appear to, get bigger. They appear to look illustrated. There's absolutely no filter on this. It's not enhanced in any sort of way. This is the original footage. Here it looks like one of my eyes is lower than the other. My actual eyes are level with each other. They're not, my head's not turned in any sort of way or tilted. Here my eyes just look wildly cartoonish and illustrated. And here it almost looks like I'm wearing like a superhero costume, kind of like the Captain America costume, sort of. That's one way you could interpret it. That's one thing that they do with this twack is they obscure the light, and so they create shadows with it, and they can create almost like tattoos on you and make you look entirely different. And here's another way of interpreting it. Here's an example where it could be interpreted as an eye here, or you could interpret it as an eye here. This is a good example here of when the camera pans up. You'll notice that some of the imagery moves with the camera, as if there's a filter like in the camera for that. I'm not really sure how that works. I don't know if they're projecting into the camera lens or into my eye when that happens, but it's an interesting anomaly with this footage. Here's an example where you can interpret a mouth here, but if you change your point of view, you could interpret it as an eye. So if you focus on the eyes above, then it's more likely that you'll see the mouth. But then if you look at the mouth, it's more likely you'll see the eye. So here's an eye here, or a creature there. There could be a creature interpreted there. Here's another pair of eyes here that you could interpret a creature on, where the last eye becomes a mouth. Here's another one where you could interpret it that way. So in a second, my eyes are about to light up a little bit.
And I've seen this do this on other people that I was talking to. They did this to Micah Swindle when he would hang out at the Grove with me sometimes. Sometimes his eyes would light up. I'm assuming he wasn't aware of it. Here I'm going to be putting my fingers and my hand between my eyes and the reflection. So you'll see that the projected imagery, the projected eyes, the projected twack still shows up over it. So here my hand is in front of both eyes, and you can literally see another pair of eyes projected onto my hand or between the reflection and my hand. I'm going to do it again here. You can see the eyes still project in front of my hands. And what's also interesting that I'm doing a freeze frame here to show is that where my mouth is, you can see where it looks like it could be teeth. It more easily looks like teeth in the peripheral vision if you focus on the eyes here. But then if you focus more on the mouth, you can still make out, how it could be interpreted as a mouth, but you could also then reinterpret it as an eye if you look at it, in a different way. The nature of this ambiguity makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to share this footage with people and to get them to understand that you definitely did see anomalies and that it's not just camera noise, especially if they're being gang stalked unbeknownst to them and being made into a brick wall and to refuse to listen or comprehend what you're saying to them. Here's another thing where a mouth could be interpreted as an eye. It's more likely to be interpreted as a mouth when you're looking at the eyes above it, when you see it in your peripheral vision, and when you look directly at it, it's more likely to be interpreted as an eye. Here again, I'm just showing how the eyes still project in front of or on top of the reflection or my hand, and how you can interpret multiple eyes there, how they stack eyes on eyes on eyes. So here it looks like one of my eyes is higher than the other, and I've actually got my eye covered up by my hand, and this is actually where my eye should be there. I think this is a pretty obvious representation of an eye that's on the back of my hand there, and you can even see the iris there. Actually, it looks like it has some color to it. Here I'll show an interpretation that I took from this one. It looked like I had cartoonish eyes here. Looked like I had been turned into some sort of creature or a cartoon person. So now I'm going to spin around and show the dining area. I was just in the living room. And right here, there always seemed to be an eye on the wall. And right here, it looks like two eyes. You can look at it differently and interpret it as one eye. But it kept morphing into one eye and then two eyes. And it looked like the eye was moving back and forth. And as always, keep in mind, I saw this with my eyes unaided. I saw this with my naked eye. And as I say the naked eye, they're playing Naked Eye. And they're trying to get me to say Naked Eye by Wilson Phillips. But they like to do things like that. It's not Wilson Phillips. And they're blocking it from my mind right now. But it looks like the eye's wiggling. It looks like it's moving back and forth. This is pretty much how I saw it with my eye. It would go in and out of focus just like that. Here's where I think it looks like it morphs from an eye into more of like a skull or a creature. In a moment here, it's going to get a little bit more complex. And the other thing important to note is there's nothing going on in the room. I don't even think the ceiling fan's on. It's just me and the camera. There's no one walking around. There's no one covering up any lights. There shouldn't be this type of movement. And again, I saw this with my eyes without the aid of a camera. This is not camera noise. As you hear, it looks more like a skull. It's going to get dark here in just a moment. What's interesting to note is sometimes when I would be filming these things, especially when I thought I was getting good footage of like an anomaly, like those vortex things that I would see, something like that would happen. And usually it would happen for longer than just a moment there. I'm not sure if that's the same type of anomaly that I experienced in other videos, but especially when I was at the Grove, it happened quite a lot there when I would be filling up at the ceiling, or the where the ceiling meets the wall. The camera would get very dark and go out of focus, and it would stay that way unless I pointed the camera away from that area for a couple of seconds and then pointed it back. And then it would usually be able to have like, a second or two of footage, if not longer, but then it would go dark again. And I think that's part of its camouflage. It's just part of that twack. It's just it causes the camera to go out of focus, causes the eyes to go out of focus, and it's just another way to sort of blind a viewer.